So Bob Galen is an Agile practitioner, a trainer, and a coach. He has extensive experience with guiding companies in their Agile adoption. Bob regularly speaks at several international conferences and professional groups on topics related to Agile software development, testing, scaling, and organizational leadership. He's also an active member of the Agile and Scrum alliances. He's published several Agile-centric books, to name a few: The 3 Pillars of Agile Quality and Testing, Scrum Product Ownership, and Agile Reflections. He's also a prolific writer and a blogger and a podcaster. So definitely lots to learn from Bob and from his experience. Please join me in welcoming Bob. And Bob, I don't know if I've got everything covered as I introduced you, but feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll get the session kicked off.
You are perfect. So let's just dive in. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Shruti, for that. Welcome, everyone. I want to dive in. Let me share my screen. So the way this is going to work tonight, it's about, think of this session as in thirds. So there's going to be a third of the time me talking, trying to give you some tools, and also talking the format of our dojos. And I make that as quickly as possible because I don't like to hear and I know you don't like to hear talk, and I don't like to hear myself talk. And then I want to shove you. No, that's not the right way. I want to invite you into breakout rooms, and you're going to break out ads. So groups of 3 or 4. The handout that I asked you to download has some scenarios on it at the end. So you can use those scenarios for your coaching dojos, or you can use your own. And I'll explain it a little bit more later. And then that's about a third. And then another third, we'll see what we learned. And it gives me a little bit buffer because I might talk too much. So let me share my screen and do that. And start my timer. All right, cool. So I think one of the keys for this, I've done this workshop a few times. I think I did it once in Ireland at a Scrum gathering. I know I did. I met some really interesting people there. Peter Fischbach is in Germany, and I met him as a coach there, and he had some fun. So I do this occasionally, and I have fun with it. So let's dive in. So I'm not going to talk about myself. Oh, I have an ask for everyone. And please don't be offended by the tentative title. So I'm working on a coaching book, and it's targeted to be published in January of next year. So not too far away. And the tentative title is Extraordinarily Badass Agile Coaching. And I've gotten good feedback about the badass, and I've gotten bad feedback. So I may have a refactoring of the title and of the inside of the book. So we'll see. It may stay and it may not. But what if you want, there's a link there. It's in chat, and there's a link there. If you could register, if you're interested in updates on the book's progress as it evolves, and some free takeaways and things like that, then you just give me your email address. Okay, that's really what it's at. So it's sort of a heads up if you want to stay involved of what's coming up. So when I say coach and coaching up, and I'm trying to create a broad definition. I'm not trying to have an Agile or a Scrum Alliance definition. So not that there's anything wrong with any of the certifications, but when I say coach, I'm implying that you could be one of these roles, and it's not a fixed list. So you could be a Scrum Master, you could be an Agile coach, inside out or an outside in Agile coach. You could be a manager, you could be a team leader, you could be a senior leader. I'm very interested nowadays in trying to influence leadership, that coaching may be part of their role, that it's not just those pesky Agile coaches that can coach the organization. Leaders can actually, it might be part of their role as well. And then project managers, and the list goes on. So really anyone guiding an Agile transformation, or maybe a change agent would be another thing to say, someone who's a change agent and trying to guide organizations. So it's a broad definition. So keep that in the back of your mind. And if I didn't include you and what you do, add yourself to the list. So it's all good. So I want to talk about a few patterns that I think are related to coaching up, but not solely coaching up. First one is we need to start with prime directives. So, and this could be, it's not exhaustive, but the prime directive for coaching, do no harm. So you don't want to hurt anyone, even leaders are human beings too, can get hurt. So you don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to hurt anyone. Hold your clients as capable, smart. They can sort out things for their own. So meet them with respect, meet them with empathy, hold them to, help them discover their way, have courage, be patient. One of the things I've learned in one of my coaching classes or certifications is reveal the system to them. So don't necessarily tell them what to do in some cases, but just reveal what's going on, build the system itself as that. So that gives you a mindset. You want to sort of enter the mindset with them. The first pattern is vet your client. I've learned this the hard way. I sometimes think that, I'm a good coach, so I'm for everyone. It turns out that Bob Galen is not. I'm like a fine wine, and not everyone likes the taste of Bob Galen coaching. And that's okay. Vet yourself and your client. See if you have, are they ready to be coached? Are they ready to be coached by you? Do you have domain experience to help? So assess the landscape, establish a coaching plan with some goals and objectives. So really some basic stuff. Oh, hold on a second, everyone. I'm going to change networks, I think. Just hold on. I had an internet connection. I hope this is better. I think this will be a better network. I'm having trouble with pesky AT&T, so I don't know why that is. So really thinking in terms of very quickly assessing, do we have a connection here? Not an internet connection, but a connection with client. Is it the right pairing? Another thing I think that's useful is, and you may not be able to see all of this, and I'll get you the slides, but have a model. And one of my models that I'm warming up to from a coaching point of view is something called the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel. There's an initiative in the Scrum Alliance right now to actually refine this. So there was a version 1. If you go to whatisagilecoaching.org, you'll see sort of version 1 of the coaching wheel. This graphic is showing you version 2. So it's a work in progress. And what it's really illustrating is some different stances for coaches. And you'll see there's a leading stance, there's an advising stance, there's a guiding learning stance, which is mentoring and training. There's a facilitation stance, which is common to other models. There's a coaching stance. And then there's some other ones like serving and things like that. I think it's useful to have a model in your back pocket and to realize what your stances are and what your strengths are, and to have this notion of dancing with your client. So this is a model that talks about that, and being aware, you don't have to do all of these, but having some favorites in your back pocket that you can dance around and help you to serve your client. I also like this model. This is a very simple, useful coaching role model. And it reminds me I actually use this in my coaching plans when I'm planning to coach a client. I think about, where do they need me to enter the coaching conversation? So very often I'll enter in coaching stance or coaching role, if that makes sense to everyone. That's the top in the middle. So I'll decide to enter it with coaching as my role, and I'll ask questions. I'll be in powerful questioning. So I'm not telling, I'm not advising, I'm not facilitating, I'm coaching. And then based on what I sense and respond, I may sense that the client needs me to move to more of a teaching stance. Does that resonate with everyone? So I enter with coaching in a coaching arc, but I may sense that the client needs me to, my coaching client needs me to change in order to serve their goal, the objectives for that coaching session. And then I may actually then change to teacher or to partner. Not too many. You don't want to be bouncing around all the boxes 100 times. Your client will get confused, and you will as well. But it's how we're entering. It's how we're dancing. Think of it as stances or the mindset that we're having. I usually end the session in coaching stance as well. So I usually enter with coaching stance and exit with coaching stance, evaluating how we landed the plan, how we met the goals of the client. But between those two, it really helps, I think, to think about stances and dancing with the client and what the client needs, how they need you to show up. Something really important, and it was in the prime directives, I want all of you, meet your client where they are, not where you want them to be, not what they're paying you to turn them into. So don't let the money drive you to have higher expectations. I mean, compensation matters, but meet the client, have that mindset of Kanban, like meet the system where it is, and then help the system to move in whatever direction. I used to meet clients and I would project my goals on that. And it's particularly not helpful with leaders. We need to ascertain what the leader is looking for. And sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they're asking for us to drive an organization or drive them up here. And we actually need to not only meet them where they are, but help them to realize that they are here. It's helpful to walk in their shoes. I was once talking, Anthony Mercino is a coach, a trainer in the Chicago area, and we were having dinner once, and Anthony was coaching leaders, and we were talking about the need for empathy, and his coaching wasn't landing, if that makes sense to everyone, right? He was coaching, and it was relatively successful, but he was struggling with outcomes, and he was struggling with goals with his leaders. And I asked a simple question of him, of like, have you been a leader? And he had not. And I'm like, well, then, how do you understand their role? Have you gone to a board meeting? Have you gone to a senior leadership meeting? Do you understand the pressures? Do you understand the business dynamics? And the answer, and I'm not picking on Anthony, but the answer was no, 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 no. And my suggestion was, why don't you stop coaching and why don't you sort of follow them around, walk in their shoes a little bit and gain some understanding of their world before you, so you can meet them where you don't even understand where they are. So understand. And he actually, to his great credit, he followed them around and they gave him permission to do that. And it really gave him some insights. So it helps if you walked in their shoes. You don't necessarily have to be a leader to coach leaders, but I think you have to look at the world on the other side. Even if I want you to lead a troop of scouts, lead a nonprofit. Don't coach leaders if you've never been in leadership roles, in the military, whatever, but leverage that understanding in your views. You need to mine that for your empathy, I think. Is this resonating with folks a little bit? I'm just trying to drop some little, you don't have to listen to all of this stuff. It's up to you. Your mileage will vary, but these are things that I try to remind myself about. Now, drop your baggage. So we have lots of biases. One of the biases that really bugs me nowadays is everyone is marginalizing leaders. Everyone is Dilbertizing leaders. I see this on LinkedIn every day, where some unnamed Agile coach will complain about leaders and complain that the problem is leaders. If I could just get the leaders to do what they're supposed to do, life would be good, and the teams would be fine, and I make a lot of money coaching teams or whatever. And I'm like, no, we need to drop the baggage that we have. We need to put on a mindset of curiosity with leaders. If there's any people in ORSC, in ORSC coaching, if you've gone through the ORSC program, there's this notion of meta skills. And the meta skills is the mindset that you put on when you're engaging a client, when you're engaging a coach. Think of it as the mindset I'm putting on and how I enter a coaching system. And in this case, what I'm saying is drop our assumptions, drop our marginalization, drop our biases, and perhaps enter with respect, or enter with empathy, or enter with heavy, deep listening, seeking to understand. Curiosity is a wonderful meta skill when you're meeting with leaders. Try to figure out why. Like, why are you going agile? What outcomes are you looking for? What is the business dynamics we're going to? So I find that, and it's still hard for me because there's a lot of bad leadership in the, so there's a lot of baggage, and dropping it before you engage. This is what I was talking about. Your experience counts when talking to leaders. Have stories to tell, right? You have stories to tell, have successes, have failures to tell. Really connect to them. Don't try to fake it. I've seen some coaches and they're like, well, I'm a CEO of a 5-person coaching organization and I'm going to coach the C-level team at American Express. That's not the same level of experience. So meet them with meekness, meet them with humility, emphasize your experience. Don't over embellish your experience. And this ties to the empathy. If you don't have it, one of the things I would love to see more of is when you're coaching up, pair with someone who has that experience. If you can do more pair coaching in these situations, it's going to rub off on you. There's a lot of learning that can happen. So I think that comes with humility. Yes, you may need to find the opportunities, but I think you need the humility to say, hey, I don't know how to do this. I need some some pairing. So volunteer, find some pair coaching. I personally love to pair coach nowadays. One, it lets me rest. I need naps during the day. So pair coaching allows me to sort of rest myself during intervals or whatever. Watch your language. Don't fall into jargon. Everyone, man, we are jargononauts with folks. So be careful with your jargon. Keep your language very simple. Don't overdo it. Even the term agile is overdone. Scrum, leadership agility, agile transformations. I mean, the list go, DevOps, SAVE, DAD, the scaling frameworks. It's like a soup. It's like an alphabet soup of stuff. Simplify it. Don't talk about the buzzwords, talk about the why and the outcomes. Talk about the foundational why we're suggesting. What does Kanban, why is that a good idea for this organization? What does it from a root characteristics perspective? So don't fall. Yes, you can use some of this, but try not to fall into the trap of jargonitis. Was there a question? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So sometimes when we're in facilitation mode, everyone would. So I'm not for the record, I'm not anti-game, and I'm not anti-interaction, but we need to select the amount of games that we inject to leaders, to senior leaders. Everyone understand what I'm saying? So please be careful with your gamification, please. So you want to keep it brief. You want to keep it tight. So simulations, workshops, activities, so use them with moderation. At least in my experience, meet people where they are and what their toleration is. A lot of senior execs don't like fun. I'm kidding around, but they really don't, and they don't like forced fun. So do a little bit of that. Case studies, sprinkle in case studies, videos, expert testimony. Again, I'm a little humor, but sprinkle in other things like that. Reviews from Harvard Business Review, etc. So really, some research might resonate with leaders. So it's a different resonation. I'm not saying don't use games, but use them in moderation. Be very until you get a relationship with that leadership group or those leaders themselves. This is a pet peeve of mine. I've had senior leadership roles, and I have wet behind the ears Agile coaches that start coming, they jump up to me and they start talking to me about leadership agility and mindset and reducing WIP and moving from projects to product and DevOps pipelines and blah, 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 blah. And then they go and they have excessive WIP themselves. Everyone understand what I'm saying? They're talking about concepts that they're not even applying themselves in their life. And it bugs the bejeepers out of me. The bejeepers is a really big, I mean, my head wants, and I'll smile at them as a leader. I'll smile and I'll be polite and I'll invite them to leave. But it's not helping them. So what I'm saying is what trumps all of the words is your behavior. We talk about courage. What I want is I want Grant to have a courageous conversation with me, right? I want Grant to sit down and have a courageous, crucial conversation with me, to have the courage to do that. Don't talk to me about Scrum attributes and courage at my team. And then as a coach, you don't have the courage to come and have a crucial conversation with me. And it may mean that your contract is on the line, but you owe me that conversation. So step up to the plate. I may not like the conversation, but I'm going to respect the fact that you're walking your talk, for goodness sakes. So I'm getting a little passionate here. I apologize, everyone. But behavior trumps words, not your behavior. Leaders are paying attention to your behavior. Don't tell me something if you're not doing it, right? Please don't. Again, at the leader, you shouldn't do it in general for any coaching, I think, but at the leaders, it's really going to turn them off. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to resonate with them. Yeah, I just have some models here. You want to have some models in your back pocket. I don't have any favorites. I mean, 5 dysfunctions is a model that I use in conversations quite a lot. You want to have some models as useful tools. You want to bring them out sort of very judiciously, but it's useful to do that. You want to see if they land. If they don't land, you might want to switch it, just like a coaching stance. You want to see if your models land with the culture and with the leader and with the clients. I love this all of us have a coaching arc. I want you to think about all of your coaching conversations as following an arc, a very simple conversational model. How am I doing on time? I'm not doing too badly. So I like this chess metaphor of opening moves, middle game, and end game. And as arc. So opening moves, you enter with asking permission, establishing goals, your coaching agreement, open-ended questions. Remember I said coaching stance? This opening moves is a coaching stance model. You're listening to the emotional field, how you're sensing. If you're thinking Cynefin, this is sort of opening moves is the sensing part too. You're sensing and you're waiting for your response. How am I going to move? How am I going to dance with this leader client? Middle game is that exploration. It's the dance. Very often we'll switch to another stance to meet the goals that we have. You're widening. You may talk about options. You may talk about brainstorming. Open-ended, powerful questions. You're listening very often. You're exploring. You're clarifying. Endgame is the drop the mic. Everyone with me. You're dropping the mic. You're closing the session. You're trying to you're getting closure, ownership, actions, plans, follow-up, repeat, getting confirmation, scheduling. So if in the dojos, I'm going to give you 10 minutes. That says that your conversation, you probably have 10 minutes for a coaching arc. I know that's short, but you'll do okay. So maybe 2 minutes for the opening moves, 2 minutes for the end game, 2 to 3, and you got 4 or 5 for the middle game. That's sort of the way you want to bound yourself. You want to be thinking about that. So you're closing, you're opening, and then you're closing the coaching conversation. It's just a useful metaphor. I want you to think of radical candor. And this is perhaps outside of the coaching stance. This might be with the advisory stance, right? When we're having maybe a crucial advisory or consultative conversation with a client. They need us to move from coaching to they need help, right? And think radical candor, think telling truth, speaking truth to power. I would recommend all of you read the book. There's some videos online, observe some videos, and really embrace this notion of radical candor and the model that Kim talks about. She talks about a hip tool, and it's sort of the way, think of it, meld it into your art. So stay humble, be helpful, be immediate and in person with the feedback, manage criticism and praise, and then don't personalize too much. Now, radical candor is a conversation, a feedback mechanism, but I want you to feed it into your coaching arcs, particularly with leaders, right? Particularly with leaders. One of the things I've found is that I've trained and I've coached people with crucial conversations, if you've ever heard of that model, that book model, and radical candor. And I've gone into organizations and leadership teams and coaches have told me, well, we've been trained. We've gone through the class. And what I've personally found is it's not about the skill. Back to picking on Grant, and he was very gracious earlier. He gave me a thumbs up. I was talking to Grant about you have to have that crucial conversation and have the courage. Everyone with me? And Grant was like, yes. Well, it's not, I would argue, it's not the skill so the skill helps. But what I found is people with the skill often don't have the will. Does everyone understand what I'm saying? So yes, we want the skill, but I found that you can have all the skill on the planet Earth, but it is frightening to have some of these coaching conversations. It's intimidating. We have to have the will. We have to practice entering. I'll actually take someone who has half the skill, who has the will, who has the courage to do it, and then they can get better rather than avoiding these conversations. Everyone understand what I'm saying? Avoidance is so easy. So think in terms of skill, but we need to be focusing on the will. That's it. Oh my goodness, how time flies when you're having fun. Here's what I want to do. I want to talk about a dojo. And please don't get caught up. There's no magic in these words. I'm going to use wrong words. So I already am warning you, but it'll work itself out. So a dojo to me is a practice session, and it has 3 roles. That's what 3 people in a room, and there's 3 roles in the room. And in the middle of the role, it's a role play. And in the middle of the role play is a scene. Everyone with me? There's a scene. There's a scenario in the middle of it. And one role is the coachee. In this case, we're coaching up. So you're going to play the leader. And you'll read the scene and say, oh, I'm going to role play this leader in this persona. So you'll put on that mindset. It's an improv. It's a bit of acting. So you want to put on your Robert De Niro or your Meryl Streep and really get into the role. So that's the coach leader, the receiver, call them, they engage and respond to the conversation. Then there's the coach. Someone's going to play the coach. They initiate or enter the conversation. They're the other side of the scenario. Receiver, sender, coachee, coach, whatever, leader, poor sacrificial lamb, whatever terminology you want to put on it. There's a third role in the dojo. It's an observer. It's a facilitator. It's someone taking notes. They're watching the conversation. They're going to run the debrief, the retro at the end. They're going to share what they've observed. They're going to share suggestions for maybe how could you have made it better. Everyone understand what I'm saying? So there's 2 roles in the role play, and then there's a facilitator on the side. If there's 4 people in a room, there's 2 facilitators. Everyone with me? So there's 3 or 4 in a room. So will be 2 facilitators. Sometimes the facilitator needs to time out the conversation. Let's say I'm working with Lori and I'm overacting as a leader, and I'm neutralizing. Lori's not learning anything because I'm just obstinate. I am like the worst possible leader on the planet. I'm saying no at everything. I'm not listening. I'm interrupting her. And Christopher Arnold is the facilitator, and he might want to come out of his role. doesn't want to do this too often, but he might time out. Say, pause, time out, pause the action. Bob, you're overacting. No one on the planet Earth acts like that. Bring it down a few notches so Lori can practice her chops. All right, begin scene again. Get into your scene. So the facilitator can either ratchet it down. Sometimes people are too nice. Everyone with me. A lot of times in these dojos, people play leaders. I've never seen a leader like that. They're nice. They're giving us money. They appreciate the feedback. Who's a leader in that role? So you may want to bring them up to the real world. So the facilitator can interrupt the flow and to maximize the value of the dojo a little bit. But you don't want to do that too much. You really want to be passive, mostly passive. So the coaching conversation is 10 minutes and the debrief retro is 5 minutes. So a dojo conversation is 15 minutes, 10 plus 5. Everyone with me? We're going to run 2 of these things in 30 minutes. So you're going to run one dojo in the room, then you're going to run another one. When you run the second one, you need to switch the roles. So you will rotate roles. You'll decide how to rotate roles. So you don't stay in the same roles. So at least someone gets to practice 2 roles. Now I put 6 scenarios, leadership scenarios in the handout. I hope you're looking at them. There's 6 little scenarios there. You can use mine, or better yet, like if Ronica has a real world scenario that she wants to practice. Ronica's going into a client tomorrow and she has a pitch to a leader and she has a hard conversation she wants to have, but she's a little bit worried about how to construct it. She may run it as a dojo tonight to practice. How cool would that be? So Ronica can throw that scenario on the table and see if in her dojo they want to do that. And that's fair game. All right. One other thing, I want you to play around in your dojos with changing stances. This is not a game for one-trick ponies. So I don't want you to stay in coaching stance. Everyone know what I mean? Just asking questions. That's not fair. So I want you to get into, I want you to switch. I want you to dance a little bit. I want you to be conscious. I want you to switch to maybe coaching to advising or coaching to mentoring and then back to coaching. So this is a place to practice your chops. This is a safe place to practice your dancing, your stance switching. So don't just stay in one stance, even though you're talking to leaders. Actually be playful with it a little bit. Any questions before we go to the dojos? It's everyone. I'm feeling positive energy and excitement. We good? All right.
I think some people got scared and left. So let me just rebalance really quickly because I had some folks.
Oh no, that's not
out
good.
of their rooms. Nope. Cowards.
Maybe it was my passion. Sorry, I'll ratchet down, everyone. Don't be scared. I'm not like this all the time. I had too much coffee.
Would you mind pinging the link?
Agree with that, Bob. You always like this. It's great.
Thank you, Shane.
All right, we're getting there. 1 second.
And everyone, if you need help, you can come out and you can send a message out or come out into the main room and ask for help. But my experience is letting you alone to see what, so for 30 minutes, I would prefer letting you alone unless you really need help. I trust you. Some magic will happen in the rooms, okay?
Great. All right, I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes as soon as you all go ahead and join the rooms.
And welcome back. I'm trying to
kicking and screaming.
let me check the faces. So no one is hurt, I don't think. Did we do any permanent damage to anyone? I hope not. So welcome back. I'm glad there's 20 of you. I'm so glad that most people sort of went in and came back out, which is always a good thing. What I want to do now is just debrief all of you. I literally am not going to tell you what to learn or what to notice. I'd like to hear from everyone, anything you observed, any tactic that seemed to work. I'll take feedback of what didn't work, but really what I want to get to is sharing lessons learned, approaches, tactics, aha moments that you had. So I need someone to break the ice. Who would like to break the ice?
I can do it, Bob. This is Grant. Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing
Hey.
well. One of the themes that emerged from both of the conversations that we had was the sense of the coachee was not being heard. And what we talked about was, at least in the opening part of that arc, was to really validate how the person is feeling and how this problem is affecting them. And in both scenarios, we said that's what was missing, was somebody saying, well, Bob, how does that make you feel? How is this impacting
Yep.
your world? And I think that empathy was a bit missing on both of ours.
That's a great observation. I love that. There's something that I learned in Norse called normalization, which is, not only empathy, but normalizing. That's a normal thing, and really connecting to the coachee, right, as a coach as well, can be very helpful. And to me, that would be an opening move activity. I mean, it can happen anytime in the arc, but you really want to emphasize it there. Nice share. Thank you, Grant. Anyone else?
This is Veronica. I'll share. So both of the folks in my group who, Kevin and Bobby, who did the coaching role, and I played the senior leader that was difficult at first, of course. Both of them got me to a place where I felt like they were helping me. So first they got me to expand, just consider the possibility that my judgment, what I had judged to be true, there might be other answers, but they did it without negating what I'd said, but just opening possibility and getting me to agree to that. And in one case I was stubborn. So with effort, and then really took a stance of, can I work with the teams? And honestly, to put distance between the teams and my bad behavior, but I felt like I was being served. Like, oh, you're going to help the teams get better? Thank you. I want that. Right. And so the two sides of that were just really lovely.
That's a nice readout. Thank you for that. I want to share something with someone. You can run these things in different modes. So you can have a rainy day dojo and then a sunny day, or sunny day, rainy day, or moderate day. So you can run the same scene and it can be really useful. So I wanted to make that point. So don't get stuck and learn just the variety of how we're meeting the client. So another share. Anyone, something you learned, something you observed?
So I think this is Shruti here. So I was lucky to have Lenny and Daryl in my breakout room. I think as coaches, we tried to stick to the 3 phases, and it was challenging to do that. But that's, I think, a great guiding principle. I think at least that was one of the kind of my go-to as I was playing the coach. And also, I think as a group, we've learned a lot about, hey, where did we spend our time? Like, did we really address the actual underlying scenario, right? Or the root cause behind, the problem that we're trying to solve. So I think trying to get to that is something that I had challenge with, and I learned that through this process. So just wanted to call that out.
Very cool. One thing I want to amplify, and I've learned this later on in the dojos, is it's really useful to play the client from an empathy perspective. And what I mean by that is embrace the role. Embrace the role. We talked about walking in their shoes. So one way to actually really resonate with walking in their shoes is diving into the improv of that role of the client. I think it can give you insights. I just wanted, it's not all about the coaching lessons. It's also, the dojo can teach us about the client. Anything else anyone wants to share?
This is Alex. I can share one.
Go ahead.
So Shane was acting as my coach, and I was a frustrated coach. So he was a coach's coach. And one thing that one of my frustrations was having leadership constantly go back on metrics and go back to the old ways of working. And a great piece of advice he shared was make it additive and do both at the same time, which can seem like a lot of extra work. And it's something that I've tried to do in the past, but I kind of forgot about. But make it additive, and then it can take a really long time. And one of his experiences, it took 1.5 years. And then eventually the old ways of reporting things, the old ways of working get de-emphasized, not necessarily go away completely, but make it additive and then see which one wins out. So it's kind of a gentle pull system.
Absolutely. I love that. I want to add one thing about, I've tried this lately. I've been very stance and dancing. So dancing across stances has been in my brain of late. And one of the things I've done is had people use the dojo and stay in one stance. So let's say, who can I pick on? Igor, your sweet spot is coaching stance, professional coaching stance. That's your go. That's where you're just so comfortable there. It's like an old overcoat. And providing advice is something that you really struggle with. So what I would say is have a dojo and force yourself. You can't use coaching stance at all. You have to enter. So same scenario, I'm going to enter it in your comfort zone. Here's coaching. Now enter it again, and you can't use coaching stance at all. You have to force yourself to be an advisor and try it that way. And then go to mentoring. So stay in a stance almost across the arc. All I'm suggesting, you would not probably use that in real life, but you're sharpening the saw with your stances coaching. It can be very useful for you all. It can be uncomfortable at first, but it's a nice, safe way to practice and create some dexterity in your coaching. Any other lessons learned that you'd like to share? Tactics that worked, that didn't work? How many people did everyone use my scenarios? I don't know if they're that useful, or did you make up your own? How many people made up their own? Not made up. How many people used real world scenarios? A few.
Yep.
Was everyone on mine? Sort of.
We
Okay,
used yours. One of yours was so good that I found myself speaking words that an actual engineering manager had spoken 20 years ago.
It does.
One of yours and one of a real current challenge.
Very over time. So this complements a community of practice, or a group. I presented something like this to a group in Nashville, a group of coaches in Nashville, and it turns out that I think once a quarter they're doing dojos now in their evenings and things, and they're really practicing. So you can practice it in public groups. You can practice it nicely in a safe community of practice inside a company. And the more real world you can get, imagine like everyone knows the CEO of the company or the C-level staff. So you actually you don't overact or underact, you play the role, which can be very helpful to the best of your ability. Respectfully, you're playing the role of these people that you're going to be coaching, and it really sharpens your saw and gets you ready. One or two any other learnings or sharings that you want?
I've never done.
Daryl,
Can you hear me?
go ahead. Yes.
I've never done role play before, and it's incredibly vulnerable and incredibly useful. So thanks. It was awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. It's really, I struggle with it. Like I like to joke. It's sort of like public speaking. What is the top 3 things that people hate to do? Public speaking is, I'd rather die than public speak, and I'd rather die than role play or something like that. So it's not a favorite, but if you can get over the hurdle, Daryl, it can be incredibly useful with peers as a learning technique.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Just wanted to add on this vulnerability. And I think it's important for us as coaches to show and they can leverage this vulnerability and do that ourselves, just because we're all human beings. And this, I think, will help the coaches, the people who we speak with, to do the same. And this is really important.
Well, that's what I was trying to say in the slides, Igor, right? It's like walk our talk, right? It's like step into it. Absolutely. And I think that sets a coaching system of, the client is going to reflect that vulnerability as well. Remember that meta skill I was talking about? How we enter the coaching system really matters, like how intentionally we are. Cool. Sal?
Oh, yes. I want to just
Juan?
share a bit from
ahead.
the client perspective. I come in with as a frustrated client and leader, and with many challenges. As a coach, you may help me by focusing on the area that I need help, even though I have different challenges. Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah. I want all of you not to get stuck real quickly. I want you not, so when you're coaching leaders, don't ever get stuck 100%. Some of you may not like this advice, but just think about it. I'm not telling you what to do, but 100% professional coaching stance in my experience, doesn't always resonate with leadership teams. And I'm not saying don't use the stance, but if that's your only stance, it can be a really hard slog in coaching leaders. So you need that dexterity, particularly advisory stance. But again, not get stuck there either. So have that nimbleness of meeting them where they are. Remember, you're serving the client. It's not what you're comfortable with. It actually doesn't matter about our comfort. We're serving the client. Okay, cool. Anyone? I want a couple more, and then we can close.
Yeah. So that was precisely my observation, Bob, that leaders do not respond very healthily to a coaching stance. They are more problem solving is their mode. So if you kind of go towards the advisory or that kind of roles, they tend to, you can at least start getting started before you start asking them questions and going through a coaching mode. Just my observation.
I agree, Shai, but again, I want everyone to think, I want you to, in your mind, the metaphor is you're dancing with your client. Everyone put your arms up, you're dancing. So you don't want to get stuck in any stance. So you can be overly advising, Shai, if you know what I mean. So we want to leverage questions when appropriate. We want to leverage mentoring. We're dancing with the client and we're sensing what they need. So, I think a lot of coaches get stuck. There are folks that get stuck in advisory or consultative, too long, too much. And I would agree that a lot of leaders want that, but we may need to be subtly sort of dancing with different stances. Anyone else?
Yeah.
I'm looking around. Why don't we land this? Why don't we land this boat? Why don't we bring it into the dock? Everyone, I hope you got something. I loved hearing the lessons. I think I covered what I wanted to cover for learning. I guess if there was one thing I want to leave you with, it's practice. Everyone repeat after me. If you want to be coaching requires practice, and not just practice on your client, like practice safely before you practice on your client. Practice, practice, practice. Thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.